Hello guys, my name is Mehdi, and several days ago I asked in a poll in my YouTube channel if you guys want to see a basic tutorial, like a 0 to 100 tutorial on Keyshot, and only one person answered, and the answer was yes, they do want to see a 0 to 100 Keyshot tutorial. So here I am making a video for that one person, and for whoever that ends up watching, I guess. And so let's begin. So Keyshot is a rendering engine. It's not a 3D modeling software. It's a rendering engine purely. And the results that you can achieve with this software you can see on this page called Render Weekly. And most of these renderings are done in Keyshot. Some of them are done in other softwares, but most of them are done in Keyshot. And as you can see, you can achieve photorealistic results with Keyshot if you're, good at it. So Keyshot, they do have their own website. You do need a subscription. If you're a student, I believe the university provides it for you. But if you're not, if you're a professional, then you would need a subscription. Okay, so you can take a look at this tutorial as a 0 to 10, basically, out of those 10 episodes that I'm planning to record for the Keyshot tutorial. And this is the very first episode, basically. So when you install Keyshot, you open Keyshot, and this is the first screen that you see. These are my recent projects. You close it, you don't need that. And the first thing I'm going to go through is the controls. Basically, you've got these 3 controls here. You don't have to click on each of them every time you want to use one of them. And I'm going to be telling you how to basically use all of them at the same time without selecting each of them. So just for like an example, I'm going to import this model into my Keyshot scene. It's just a sphere. I will go through that later. And as you can see, we have a sphere. I'm going to click OK. And then if I want to tumble around the model, I can just use my left click on my mouse, and I can just tumble around the model, basically. And that does change the camera settings. If you pay attention to the numbers on the right, you can see that that changes the camera settings and not the model itself. So the second thing is panning around. So you could go and select pan. Okay, you could go and select pan from the menu up there, and you can just use your left mouse button. But if you don't want to just do that every time, you can basically use your mouse scroll. You can just like hold it down, and then you can pan around. And as you can see, again, on the right side of my screen, you can see that the camera target is changing. So this moves the camera and not the model. And the third thing is obviously dolly. Again, you can choose it from the menu up there, and then zoom in and zoom out into your model. Or you can just use your scroll mouse and then zoom in and zoom out. And as you can see, the distance over there is changing. Now the distance right now is in inches, I believe. That's the default that I chose. It doesn't really matter. If you're importing a file, say from SolidWorks, it uses the same units that you use in your SolidWorks file. I will, again, go through that later, maybe in the second episode. I'm gonna be deleting this. Actually, we can just keep it as is. And basically, this is your materials tab or your materials library. Keyshot already has a lot of default materials, fuzz, glass, measured, whatever that you want. You can just look it up here, say brass, and you get these 8 materials. These are, I believe, the default materials. And you can just drag and drop one of them into your object. Now the second tab that I'm going to be showing you is the colors tab, actually. I have maybe used it once or twice. I don't know anyone who uses it because later when I'm teaching the material graph, you won't really need to use this colors library. But I can tell you what it does, and it basically changes the color of your material. Now it depends on the material. For example, here we have a specific metal or a texture or material. It wouldn't work on this. I'm going to be showing you. You see how it doesn't do anything, how it doesn't change anything. But say if we have plastic. And again, I'll be showing you how to do all these things in later episodes. If you have a plastic and if you have like multiple labels on it, and you know you don't want to just change the whole material or like start up from scratch, you can just drag and drop it, and then it only changes the color, the base color of that material. So let's go back to brass again. If you want to go back one step, just like any other software, it's Control Z. It takes you back one step. So this is the colors library, the texture library. Again, it comes with a lot of default textures, and every time you download a material from either the cloud library or you download it from a third-party website, the texture that is attached to it will come to this folder. So the texture usually can be used for the bump map of the material. So for example, on this one, we have brass brushed. So the texture would be the brushed on the brass material, right? Maybe you want to attach, say this one, the blue mesh, to your material, and we hit bump, and as you can see, it is applied to the bump node of our material, which is applied to our object, to our sphere. I will go in depth with the material graph and the bump node and everything in later episodes, but just keep in mind this is what it does, the textures library. Environment, as you can see here, we are in an environment. If you just scroll out, I guess, or zoom out, this is our basic startup environment. And we have another environment tab here. As you can see, they're not the same thing. So this is the environments library, and you can drag and drop either a default environment or an environment that you already downloaded. You can just drag and drop it, and then you will have the environment around you. And as you can see, it's affecting how the sphere is reflecting light. And on the right side, I guess I'll go over that in a second. But let's just finish the left side, or the library. So again, it has a bunch of different environments. You can import your own environment. And the backplate library is basically an environment, but it's not. It's just a 2D background. So say we want to put this on this bench here. And as you can see, the 2D background doesn't move. It's just that it does. The light doesn't affect our 2D background. Nothing really affects our 2D background, and everything that we have in our scene affects the 3D models that we have again in the scene. As you can see, we have the previous environment. So the 3D model, the sphere that we have, is reflecting the light that's coming from our 3D environment when we applied it. But it doesn't, again, affect our 2D background. I have a few tutorials on how to do in-context renders. The 2D backgrounds are usually used for in-context renders. I don't use it that much because it's too hard, it's too complicated. It takes too much time to match everything together. Like if I wanted to make this look photorealistic, I had to, remove this environment. I had to build up a new environment from scratch, and then I had to match the perspective. I had to match the light, the material, the graininess of the photo, the saturation, everything else. It's just too much work, and I do not recommend it. But if you are a beginner, you could use this to your advantage, because you don't have to play with model importing and all that exciting things. So favorites, just your favorite stuff, doesn't matter. Models. So the models, there are some default models, although this one is not default, and there was one more that wasn't default, and this one. I did import those two, and obviously this, the knee brace. But you've got some default geometry models that I used the sphere from. And if you go to backdrops, again, these are just some 2D planes that you could put like behind an object or something, and then change the material. It's like a curtain. Doesn't matter, just some models. And we've got the downloads. These are some of the 3D models along with their textures, materials, and everything else that's attaching that I downloaded from the Cloud Library. Now, the Cloud Library is the second thing that I'm going to be showing you guys, or I'm going to be teaching you guys. And also, one more thing that I should have mentioned at the beginning, if you guys can't see these tabs here, like something like that, the right tab, if you hit space, it would bring it up. But I don't know about this one. I don't know the shortcut key for it. But if you don't see any of these here, you can go to your workspace, and then you can either change one of these to whatever you want. Mine is on startup. You could choose default. It will give you more options here. So it's up to you. And then again, if you say you're like on startup but you're not seeing something, you go to window, and then you have all the tabs and all the settings here. Say ribbon goes away, and it's R. So everything is here, and you could just enable or disable a tab from the window settings over there. So the second thing I should mention is the Cloud Library. It is very underutilized, unfortunately. I know a lot of people who hasn't touched Cloud Library for some reason. It's a very great tool. Say you are looking for a material that you cannot find in the materials library, in the default library. So say, I believe you have grass, but you have grass here. But say you don't find grass in the materials library. You go to Cloud Library, and then you look up grass. And we have some materials that users like you and I made and uploaded, and they usually work really good, or most of them work really good, and they're for free, so you can just download it here. Light leaf. Let's do light leaf, and then it goes into your downloads, and you can basically just look it up here, light leaf, and use that, drag and drop it into your material, and you have it there forever until you delete it. You can do the same exact thing with environments. Say we have a soccer field environment. If you're rendering something that has to be in a soccer field environment, again, you can download it, and it goes into your environments library. You have backplates. Usually you find a lot of these backplates because they're just 2D images. Anyone can just upload their 2D background. And I really don't, again, use the backplace. Textures, you can't really find anything grass-like texture here because, there is not a, number on top of it. So we can say, fabric, right? Let's look up fabric. Let's see what comes up. You might find something there, you might not. Really depends on what you're looking for. There we go. We have some fabric-y textures. And again, when you download the texture, it just goes into your texture library. And models, this is what I use the most when I'm populating my scene. There are a lot of 3D models, free 3D models here that you can, look up and download and then use in your material. Keyshot eye implants, like, I guess you could use that like for a robot or something. But Dusty Retro TV, Keyshot goggles, helmet. It doesn't matter. These are just like some really random 3D models. Again, I use them for populating my scene. Large indoor fern, and they are completely free. And you can just download it. Let's see. Let's download. Yeah, let's do the Keyshot eye implant actually. Let's close it. It goes here into the downloads, into the downloaded models library thing. So let's look up eye, and we have the Keyshot eyeball, and as you can see, the scale is just too humongous. So that means the software that this was done in, say, I don't know, Blender or SolidWorks or whatever, the units were different. So you usually come across a problem like this, and that would take me to the second or the third point that I'm going to be talking about. So let's do something. Let me use a solid color background for now, and we have our the tab here, the project tab here. The first tab is scene. You can see all your models, all your 3D models, and ground planes or whatever you have in the scene in this in this tab. So we have the eye model, and I can just basically rescale the model manually if I want to. So say half. It's still too big, obviously. Or I can click on the move tool. So the move tool isn't only for moving the 3D model; it's also used for rotating and also scaling the 3D model. So right now I'm going to turn off rotation and scale settings here, and I'm going to be showing you how to you can just like move this around instead of manually move it and like use this like XYZ numbers here. Or you could rotate it just like that, or you could rescale the model just like that. So as you can see, there are four colors here. The yellow one, the box, just like rescales the model uniformly, and green is for, what is it for? I think it's for Z, I believe. Red is for X, I believe, or blue is for Y, or vice versa. I don't know exactly which one is for which axis. It doesn't really matter. Just if you want to rescale it, just play with it. But I usually, for scaling stuff, I usually do use the manual scaling here. So my numbers are clean, basically. And I'm gonna be just deleting that because that's just too big. And if you right click on your model and you want it to be centered, like right now I want it to be centered, I right click on it and then I go set camera target and then also center and fit part. So set camera target, it sticks to the model. Basically your camera sticks to the model, and then if you hit center and fit part, it zooms in to the model. So we have this model. Let me just use an easier material for my laptop to render. And basically, this is everything that's in your scene. Properties, I will go through that later in later episodes. And materials, it shows every different materials that you have in your scene, whether it's 1 or 10 or 100. It shows all the materials here, and you can just make it look bigger or smaller. Say you have like 100 materials and you want to change each of them manually. That's what you do. So this is the scene. Obviously, you could look things up, and that's basically it. The materials tab, though, it shows the material settings on whatever model that you click twice on. So if I have, let's add a second material. If I have that pyramid-shaped material, and it's obviously much smaller than what we have, but it's fine. If I have that one, I also came with the ground plane, so I'm going to delete that. I can double click on it, and it would bring me to the materials tab. And as you can see, this is just the default material, just a blue colored diffuse material. And you can change your materials from here if you don't want to go to the materials library and then drag and drop materials into your object. So this is obviously not the same thing. It's just actually a more simpler way to change the materials. So diffuse, I'm going to be making it, or I'm going to be turning it into a glass, a solid glass, and this is my material. And if I want to change another object's material, I can just again double click on it and change it from here, or the material graph, which I will go to later. Textures, I already talked about textures. I will go in depth with the specular bump and opacity in later episodes and all these fancy words and fancy settings. But if you're a big beginner, I think for right now you can get away with just dragging and dropping materials into your model and then rendering. So labels, if you want to attach a label onto your model, you can do so through here or through a material graph. But if you want to do it through here, you can add label, texture, or video, and then you can choose a JPEG from wherever you have the JPEG, or these are the formats that's accepted, and you can basically put it on there on the model. I won't be showing it right now, but I will go. I will. I will teach you guys how to do it later. So camera, very important. You can add cameras from here, and you can just delete cameras again. And if you want to save a camera, say you want this to be your main camera, and then you want to save it, and then you want to rotate around the model, you have to save it first. We can save it, and then we can go to free camera and do our thing, and then go back to our main camera. Now, if you don't save it, your camera would just go away. The settings would go away. You have to save it, and then just to make sure you can lock it too if you want to. But right now I won't be locking it. Again, with the whole settings that I showed you, the tumble, pan, and dolly, you can change them here manually. Twist, it will twist your camera. Set camera target, we already did set our camera target, and it's this one. Walkthrough mode, I don't know what it is. I guess I'll look it up, and then in the later episode I'll tell you what it is. Standard view, you can choose a default standard view from this this menu here, and it's pretty good if you're doing like orthographic stuff. This really helps, and you can really like center your model or something. Grid, if you want to follow the rule of third in photography, you would use grid. You can do halves, you can do thirds. This is the rule of third, and you can do quarters. Just basic photography stuff. Stay above ground. I don't exactly know what it is. Don't use it. I'll figure it out later. And we have lens settings, orthograph. Perspective is obviously perspective. You can change the perspective value or the focal length, and you see how it's changing. The higher you go, the more orthographic it would look. And based on another tutorial and based on experience, of course, I know the best value for the focal length is between 67 or 65 to 70 millimeters. And field of view, obviously, this is field of view, just goes back and forth. Orthographic, if you don't know what orthographic is, it's just basically like a 2D perspective view. Basically, if you want to do if you want to do like a technical drawing or something, but you want the render, you want to use the rendering, you could change it to orthographic and choose a view and then use that as your technical drawing. This is obviously save reminder. You could save it. You could also save it from here or here. And if you want to save the package, if you want to send the file to someone, say you have like 10 different 3D models in your scene, and then you want to send it to someone to like fix something, or to the client or something, you can save it as a package, and then you can send the package to the person, and the person would have access to all the 3D models, all the textures, everything that you have in your scene. So I'm gonna go to perspective, shift. I don't exactly know what these two are. Shift, panoramic. One of them is for architectural drawings. I have no idea what this does. I guess I can again figure this out and then talk about it. So I'm gonna keep it on perspective. Stereo, never use it, don't know what it is. It's some weird thing, as you can see. I suppose it can be useful if you're like I don't know, maybe if you're like modeling something that's like moving, maybe like a moving ball, maybe. I suppose you could use this for that. I'm not quite sure what it does or what it is for. I can play with it and I can let you guys know. Depth of field, very important. If you want to add blur to your object, say you have like, oh god, okay. Say you have two or like more than one. Oh boy, okay. So you have two or more than one models in your scene, and then you want to blur out one of them, and you want to keep the other one crisp and sharp. You can use this instead of taking it to Photoshop and do all that time-consuming stuff. So when you choose a point, you could use this as choosing a point on your scene. We have the FStop. I don't know what F stands for. Probably just focal or something. But the more you increase this, the area of clarity would increase basically. So we have 15. Let's do 1, and we'll see, or you'll see what I mean. As you can see, the only place that's like not blurry is the same exact point that I clicked on. Now the f-stop depends on how big your scene is. So maybe like for this scene, 20 works the best. Maybe for like another scene, 2 works the best. Depends on what you're doing or what you want to achieve, and So again, you can see that I changed this, the depth of field, and I also changed that. And this says unsaved. So if I want to save it, or I should save it, but let me show you guys this. If I don't save it and go to save for camera, right, and then open a new camera, and then go back to my first camera, to my already saved camera, which was saved before I applied the depth of field, you can see that it goes back to what it was saved before. So that's for the camera settings. It's very important. Environment. Again, that's like another important tab or settings. You could change the brightness of the environment. You can change the contrast. I don't really mess with the contrast in here. I change it in the image or in the image tab. The size. This is the size of your environment. So if I scroll that, lighting environments. If I scroll out and then if I change the size, you can see that it's changing the environment wall, and that would affect the light basically. Height, I don't exactly know what height does. I guess it just, that's what it does. Not that important. Rotation, that also is important. It affects the light reflected on your model. You can just rotate it like that, and you can see that the light is changing here. Now, if you want to keep the lighting environment, but you don't want to use the background, you can actually change it to a solid color, like white or red or whatever, but you still have all the reflections and all the lights on your model. So I'm going to change this to metal, and you'll see what I mean. I'm going to change this to 0, so you can see the reflection of the environment, but the background is just a solid color. And backlight image is just the 2D image that I talked about. You could also upload your own 2D image from here. I'm going to keep it on white. Articulation, ground shadows, it adds ground shadows. Ground reflections, it would add a reflection on the ground. Though I don't want you guys to use these like the ground reflections, because you can use you would have more options if you just add a ground plane. And flat ground, that would also change, as you can see, change the lighting environment. I usually like to keep it flat if I want to be more fully realistic. And ground size, again, it changes the size of the ground. As you can see, this is our ground right now, 50.57 centimeters. And in later tutorials, I will go through HDRIs, but basically you could just add a light source anywhere on in your scene, and you have a lot of settings and options to play with it, so you don't have to manually make like a light source, like a physical light source in your environment. It's really convenient, and I suggest you guys play with it if you have the chance. Lighting. I usually, if I have a bunch of models of 3D stuff going on, I usually like to keep it on performance mode. And performance mode really makes things look really weird and unnatural, but it would increase or decrease your render time. And then if you want to do like a final render, you of course have to turn off performance mode. But for now, I'm going to just keep it on just to show you what it does. We have some lighting presets, basic, That's just the default lighting setting that it comes with. Product, it changes all these options here: interior, jewelry, and custom. So if you like change something here, it goes into custom, and you can save it. Ground illumination, I want to turn it off. You can see if I turn it on, you do get like a little greenish shadow on the ground. Self shadow, if you have like multiple objects, this is just like a sphere and an pyramid, but if you have like stuff intersecting with each other, you do want to turn on self shadows because it would make it look, of course, more natural. Global illumination, you can see how it affects our light. Again, if you see a lot of these values here, like ray balances or like shadow quality, or like with the materials. We don't have it here, but with like plastic or something, you do see a lot of these values, and obviously the more you increase it, the higher of a lighting quality you will get. And caustics is, let's see, you can see the caustics here, kind of. This is caustics. So when light shines through, say, like a liquid, or shines against a metallic surface, in our case, it would shine back to the floor or to the ground, and then it would make like a cool, colored reflection, basically. Product mode, interior mode, I don't really know what that does. Image, you can change all your the ratio and like the resolution here. These are just like the default landscape ratios, and we have the portrait ratio. I never use portrait, but with landscape, you can just change it to whatever you want. We have the ratios, we have the literal pixel size, and we have custom. I mean, you can just edit custom and then add your own ratio. Just for a beginner render, you don't have to change really any of these settings, but when you get more advanced, when you become more advanced, you do want to change the settings. So photographic is it has all the settings that you see here, but with like more settings. And I usually like to keep it on linear, and exposure increases the light exposure. White balance, again, it increases the or decreases the white balance, and contrast, same thing, increases contrast, decreases contrast. Curve, I've never took a photography class, but those who already took a photography class know what this curve does. Changes the shadows, changes the midtones, the lights, and just play with it and see what you like the best, and just use that settings. So I'm gonna turn this off because I didn't like that. Color increases the saturation, decreases the saturation, increases the vibrance, decreases the vibrance. You could do that in Photoshop too if you want to, but if you want to save some time, you can use the color settings here. Denoise, I've only used it once or twice, never really used it. If you have, let me see, So if you have, say, little fireflies, little dots in your render, you can turn these two on, and that would basically get rid of those dots. You can't really see anything here because the scene isn't that complicated, and my laptop can take care of it on its own. But if you have like a really complicated scene with a lot of light sources, a lot of metallic materials, you do want to turn this on if you don't have the right rendering power. But it would remove a lot of details, and that is not good. Bloom, if you have like an LED light, or if you have a light source, like an external light source, not external, if you have a physical light source in your scene, bloom, it would add like an aura around the light source to make it look more photorealistic. I don't have any light source here, so I can't really show it to you, but it changes stuff. Vignettes, I do like to add vignettes sometimes. It just adds like a border, a blurry border to your scene. But remember, if you add a vignette and then you render it and you want to do like post-processing, this would affect your background because you will see waves of color in the background. So we have white here, and then like whitish, grayish, gray, black. You will see those waves in your post-processing. Chromatic aberration. Let me show you what it is. So if you increase the chromatic aberration, can't really see it. Oh, here. It adds let's see, it's the fives. Okay, so it adds this like that kind of blurry effect that a lot of cameras do, or like usually the older cameras. Obviously, you don't want to go to that extent. Five. I usually keep it at one, and it again adds to the photorealism. The background color, you can change the background color. You will lose some details in the background if you do choose to use this. Or use a front plate. It will open, your file browser, and then you can literally just drag and drop or use a 2D front plate for your render. Say it's like a logo or like your brand or something, and you want it to be on top of your render. You could do that in Photoshop. I don't really recommend you using it here. And obviously, you could change the opacity of the front plate. So this is the basic interface of Keyshot. Say you did or you did finish this video and you do want to render something. There is a render option here. You can just hit it, and there are some settings here. I will go deeper into the render settings later. But yeah, you could change the resolution. That depends on the resolution that you already, or the ratio that you already have. You can change the DPI, 200 DPI, 300 DPI, change the name, and I won't go through that for now. The options, this is also important. I do use a render network, so this is active. I send it to a render network, and the samples, you want to do something around 100 for like a basic render. Just use 100. Don't use anything, I guess, lower. 50, 100, something like that. And then you can, if you don't have a render network, you can just render it here. And it asks you if it asks you to save your camera, and if you want to save it, you can save it. You don't have to save it. And Q, if you have multiple cameras, you can choose these two cameras, select all, and then you can add it to your queue. And then when you hit process queue, it renders all your cameras, which is pretty helpful. It saves time. And so that's about it for this episode. I actually don't know how long it took. You can save it here. Just save it as one. But let me know what you think about this tutorial. Let me know if I should continue making tutorials like this. Next time I will go more in depth with the material graph and like the camera settings and stuff like that. And that's about it. Thank you very much. I hope you guys have a good week and a good rest of the day. And we'll see you guys later.